Actually was part of my speech, but it's one reason why we finished. I left that section out, so it's one reason why we have some time for questions. But you're absolutely right that we do need to restore the conventional lending standards. And essentially the idea of a 20% down payment and a fixed interest rate type mortgages didn't serve us too badly in the 1960s and 1980s and so on. It was not, did not create severe kinds of problems. It's only when the fixers got into it in terms of saying, hey, that you ought to be able to buy a house with 5% down payment, then it went to 2.5% down payment. And we do need to restore those lending standards. I was looking in the Tallahassee Democrat this last day and note that there are still lenders in Tallahassee that are making loans with 5% down payment and 10% down payment. And it'd be interesting to know whether or not these lending institutions are in fact figuring on holding those loans. One of the institutional changes which has been advocated by a number of people is that the originator of the loan be responsible for whether or not the loan defaults, even if they sell it on to another party. And that would give the originator an incentive to seriously scrutinize the loan and the creditworthiness of the person that they would extend the loan to. So certainly we do need to, in my judgment, we need to phase out Fannie and Freddie. It was a mistake having them in the first place. Some of you may not be aware. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were, in essence, private firms that had a competitive advantage in the marketplace because their bonds, at least they were perceived to be, and as it turned out, perceived correctly, backed by the federal government. So they could borrow at lower interest rates than other lenders. And that's why they were able to grow so rapidly and extend all these loans and essentially extend all these bad loans, or what turned out to be bad loans. And so when you have a corporation like that where government gives a competitive advantage, but at the same time that you have private stockholders, you're asking the executives of that corporation to serve two masters, and that's not a good idea at all.
Daniel?
Dr. Gwartney, much of what you talked about today as far as monetary policy and tax policy is really a federal issue. And my question is, if you're advising the state of Florida, since we're part of this economy, what is something that the state, the legislature, could do in Florida that would help Florida apart from what the federal impact's going to be?
Well, again, that is a question, and I've thought a great deal about it. And I think the answer to it is not much. It's almost a little bit like asking yourself the question, what can you as an individual do? You know what advice I would give you as an individual and what I personally am doing?